He's looking at me.
The North Hunterdon-Voorhees Regional High School District Board of Education meeting on Tuesday, August 13th, 2024 is now called to order. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, NJSA 10-4-6 at SEEK, adequate notice of the meeting has been provided by submission of notice of the time, date, and location to the Star-Ledger on December 5th, 2023, and the Hunterdon County Democrat on December 7th, 2023. Subsequent notice of this meeting location and time change was advertised in the Hunterdon County Democrat on August 8th, 2024. Notice and, to the extent known, the agenda of this meeting have been posted at North Hunterdon High School and Voorhees High School, provided to the municipal clerks of Bethlehem Township, Califon Borough, Town of Clinton, Clinton Township, Franklin Township, Glen Gardner Borough, Hampton Borough, Highbridge Borough, Lebanon Township, Tewksbury Township, and Union Township, as well as other interested parties, and posted on the district website. Fire exits are located in the direction indicated. If alerted to a fire, please move in a calm and orderly fashion to the nearest smoke-free exit. Please silence your cell phones. And roll call.
Ms. Cagnon? Here. Mr. Chapman? Mr. Gallup?
Here.
Ms. Hens? Mr. Bertrand?
Here.
Mr. McIsaac?
Here.
Mr. Mealy?
Here.
Ms. Reyes?
Here.
Ms. Salina?
Here.
Mr. Stanton?
Here.
Ms. Beato? Here. And Mr. Carvin?
Here. Okay, flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I need a call for motion and second to approve agenda item 4-1, which is the meeting minutes from July 23rd, 2024 board school meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Beth? Christina?
Abstain.
All right, abstain. All in favor?
Abstain.
Opposed?
No.
No.
And abstain is John,
Kim.
Brian, and Kim.
Do we have enough to pass
I was going to say, do we have enough? We have
The
enough, right?
abstentions.
Yeah, it doesn't, okay, right, okay. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 5 is our board goal setting for the 2024-25 school year. And we have Gwen Thornton here tonight from the New Jersey School Board Association Field Representative.
Good evening, and thank you. It's a pleasure to be back here in North Hunterdon-Voorhees. I was saying to Brendan, he looks completely out of context for me. But also, John has been here the entire time I have been
serving North Hunterdon-Voorhees. And I want you to know, John, this has been on the corner of my desk going on 2 years now. But I have for you, and it's my pleasure to honor you for your 10 years of service as a Board of Education member. So I wanted to bring it tonight. I wanted to bring it to you in person. So that's the first order of business for me. It is, and we do truly appreciate every board member's service, whether it's a recent service or long-term service, and it's always nice to have both on a Board of Education. So it's a pleasure to be here this evening. I really came to talk about setting board goals. I know that you have district goals in place. However, you completed your board self-evaluation, which is a best practice because it says we've accomplished a great number of things over the course of the year. What have we done well? What's in progress? And what perhaps could we do better as a Board of Education to more effectively support student achievement and success in the district? And how can we more effectively support our administration in their endeavors in doing that? And so I just wanted to just talk briefly, just a little bit for those of you perhaps who are newer, who have not heard this presentation year after year, which poor John has heard for probably a decade, around goal development. And that is, the district goals refer to the overall operation of your district, whether it's your instructional program, staffing, PD, your facilities, your finance, and wow, that's an impressive construction project you have going on with the VOTAC. I haven't seen that in my travels recently, so that is so nice to see. And board goals are goals around your processes and procedures, but in some sense, they overlap with the district goals in that you want your goals to support the administration's efforts around the district goals. So that is my intent, really, to talk about that tonight. And it really is a cycle that occurs on an annual basis in terms of setting goals in the June-August kind of timeline, and then determining and writing action plans so that you know what steps you have to take to move closer to having that goal come to fruition, and then looking at the results. And that's true for district goals, and it's also true for board goals. A goal without a plan is nothing but a wish. So you have to have a plan to move a goal forward. And so you would then, next summer, look at what progress you made over the 24-25 school year and see, does that goal, was it completed? Did we make satisfactory progress? Is it something we need to carry forward? And then make adjustments if necessary, and then move forward. And in the instance of district goals, it becomes the objective basis for the evaluation of your superintendent. Board goals don't operate in that same function, but this chart refers to both district as well as board goals because it's essentially the same process. And I wanted to just show you that. So you might say, well, why do we need board goals? If you look at your evaluation, and I typically pay closest attention to the last 2 pages of any board's evaluation, because in some ways that self-evaluation looks backwards, and I want you all to look forwards, to think about the coming school year. So looking at the identified challenges that you came up with, clearly one of those overarching themes was the need for a strategic plan. When you identify as board members what you see as the challenges are in order to raise student achievement, in order to move the district forward. But thinking about board goals, thinking about policy development, and I read, obviously, I'm very delighted that you're now using NJSBA for your policy service. And I know that that's something that is a relatively recent development, but I know that that's underway. But looking at your oversight and monitoring, which is what the board really does. By definition, you have 4 major functions. You develop policy, you provide oversight and monitoring, whether you're talking about the budget, whether you're talking about oversight in terms of student achievement, looking at the assessments and data and how far that's moved, communications with both your internal as well as your external stakeholders. How and what perhaps do you need to do to enhance your governance skills and performance? And then what kind of professional development might be beneficial to the Board of Education? I know I wasn't here last year, and I don't believe you've really engaged in a lot of professional development as a board in the course of the last year, but that may be something that you really want to think about. And supporting your administration to achieve those district goals. So while I know that strategic planning did not make it formally into your district goals, I think that that's something that is a shared responsibility between the board and the administration. You're not going to implement the strategic plan. However, working together and engaging your community, both internal and external, on that strategic plan is a critical and appropriate role for the board to play. And then addressing any of the challenges that you identified. Clearly, some of the challenges that you identified in your self-evaluation, the obvious, and it's a challenge for every school district in the state right now. I say this at every goal setting that I go to, and that are fiscal constraints that we're now faced with that are getting increasingly difficult to look at because they change, and we don't have a predictable, sustainable funding formula that you can depend on year over year because it changes with the economic conditions of the state and the state fiscal budget, if we are being very honest about it. And so thinking about more difficult constraints financially for every school district across the state is something that you need to think about, and making sure that your planning, which is, again, goes to that strategic planning model, thinking about looking out 5 years and where do we want to be and how do we support that, because it's going to take some adept juggling to be able to really make forward progress. Again, you also have, and it was mentioned several times, your facilities are obviously always going to be in need of upgrade, maintenance, and looking at that and looking at changes in enrollment and what that drives in terms of the future for all of you. So as you think about setting goals for the board, you want to make sure that those board goals are sustainable over time, and will move you forward. Here are some suggestions. Completing the evaluation within the statutory timeline, although I know that you skipped right ahead there. Back up, sorry. Whoop. Where's the back arrow? It's not cooperating with me. There we go, there we go. That's something that I know you were compliant with. That's not an issue, but some boards struggle with getting that done. Reviewing and revising your bylaws to ensure that they reflect current practice. As you know, your bylaws refer solely to the way you operate as a Board of Education. That's not all policy. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your bylaws to make sure that the way what you have incorporated in your bylaws reflects your current practices. And then engaging in professional development. Some boards want to become certified as a way to communicate with your community as well as your professional staff, your commitment to continuous improvement. But these are all different kinds of things that you can think about in terms of your board goals. One of the things that I was struck by was that you may, in your self-eval, was the need perhaps for establishing what we would call board norms around board behavior prior to a meeting, during a meeting, and after a meeting, and that's mostly around communications, so that there's uniform agreement about communications and how we're going to interact so that we can retain our focus on student achievement and the issues and concerns that matter most in your community for moving the kids and focusing on the kids and not getting sidetracked by issues that may be important but perhaps tangential to your roles and responsibilities, which is always to put students at the center of all of your decision making. So that may be something that you might wish to think about. I know that it has been a challenging kind of year in a lot of districts who are faced with that, and we have found that coming up with communication norms which are simply agreements about how we're going to treat each other and how we're going to operate with each other before a meeting, during a meeting, after a meeting, so that civility and the ability to make progress becomes first and foremost for the Board of Education. But certainly any ideas that you have, I would think one board goal would be to support the strategic planning process would be an appropriate goal for all of you. I don't know how all of you feel about it or what you believe would be most important for you to focus on. So whatever thoughts you have, I am open to hearing. I'm just giving you my take on looking at your board self-assessment.
So I think we all universally agree what we have to do with 5-year plan, right? So can we agree
That's number one, right? I think we're all pretty clear that and Rich and the administration we all buy in that needs to be done, right? So I think that one's easy.
And you don't
Need more than 2 or 3 board goals. You don't want so many goals that your focus becomes so diffuse that you don't make progress on any of them either. I'm not suggesting you have to have 8 or 10 goals. What I am suggesting is that you probably should have 2 or 3 at most in terms of board goals.
Looking at the list, our policy committee and implementing the new policy, that's already covered.
Okay.
So you can take that off the list because we're
It's just a
reviewing.
that's just
Yeah, no, I mean, that if we were coming up with goals, I think we don't have to worry about that. But I do think reviewing and revising the bylaws, I don't recall a time that we've ever done that. That as part of a scheduled basis, I know we take when we were taking each policy and looking at it, but we've never really taken each bylaw and looked at it. Maybe that's something the
Part of
policy
that's going to be
committee.
done through school boards now, but I think what we could do over the rest of the school year is look at the changes that school board made and then determine whether or not we want to keep those exact changes or we want to modify those to meet our needs in the districts.
And then update the bylaw accordingly. So that would be part of the same process then.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you just want to make sure they reflect your current practice.
Right.
You know, I remember when I was on the board, there were a whole host of things that were in the board bylaws that had just never been eliminated.
Committees that had were no longer functioning, but they were still listed in your in the policy manual. So you just want to make sure that whatever your current practices are embodied in your bylaws.
When do you see the potential for something like norms being embodied within bylaws as far as guiding principles for interactions, or are you seeing them as something separate?
You can embody norms.
In your bylaws if you wish, but I also believe that norms probably are better served by being, yes, you can put them in your policy, but they need to be reviewed every year after reorganization, because when the board changes, those things become the guiding principles for how your board operates. So, it's looking at what our, overall focus is, and then how we're going to treat each other and how we're going to operate as a board.
Well, I know in many instances, norms are something that are often, once established, sort of reviewed as the first step of any sort of meeting at the committee level or even potentially at a board level, just as that reminder of these are the principles.
I actually, when I set board norms with the board, I actually require every one of the 9, or however many board members there are, to sign and date them.
Right.
Because you're required to self-enforce, right? They're only as good as the board's recognition that these are our norms, this is how we all come to consensus around how we're going to move forward together. And so I think it's important to do that. You can then embody them in your policy if you'd like, but then at reorg, when you have a new board and new members, I think it pays to revisit it. I think it helps to onboard new folks as well, to understand this is the culture and the climate of our district, this is how we operate, this is how we agree to treat each other. So there's that common shared understanding for new board members as well as seated board members. So I think that that's something that may be something you wish to consider.
I think it would be good to establish some board norms today.
I'm sorry?
Can we establish board norms today?
Tonight?
Today?
I don't think we have time to do that. That generally takes a longer period of time to do that, but that's something you could do in, say, a whole hour and a half, perhaps, before a regular board meeting. Or if you have a really short board meeting that you know is really short, you could do it at the close of your board meeting. But I think that takes a longer period of time to work on a little bit.
Can you help us with that?
Certainly,
Someone from
JSBA can help you with that.
Okay, that'd
So
be great.
I think we should
Separate bylaws and policy from norms, but I think it'll take us too long to do.
No, and that's why I said we
Yeah, I don't-
should do
yeah, so I agree. I
bylaws
mean, I think this is a
separately
good
as-
idea.
with help.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it should be, I don't know how well you feel, but I think making a session where we set norms is a good goal, so we do it sooner. 'Cause I fear the policy and bylaw is going to take us all year, obviously, right, to get all this.
Well,
it's
policy
well, a fair
bylaws
amount of
can
time.
be handled through the policy
Right,
committee
right.
anyway, so.
That's just my 2
yeah.
cents.
And this is a full board activity.
Yeah, well, and that's my other, policy is sort of, committee out, and I think this would be more a better of a collaborative session.
It is a collaborative session for all members.
Or to participate in, and I understand the policy needs to run through committee, and that's perfectly appropriate to do it that way. So, does that work for all of you? So your 3 board goals will be to support your strategic plan as the Board of Education, review and revise your board bylaws through the course of the school year, and then to create board norms at a special meeting, or a separate meeting, or before a meeting, or whenever you decide you want to do that, in whatever format.
Regarding the board norms, is this something that's universal throughout the state of New Jersey, that a lot of people do this? How many districts do you think are doing it?
The norms? Many, many, many boards.
Okay, good.
I don't want to say a majority. I only cover Somerset, Hunterdon, Warren, and somewhere else that I can't remember right now.
You'll get that on the way home.
But lots of boards all across, in those districts, all across those districts. And I know my colleagues do this as well on a regular basis.
Have we ever done that before?
Never,
No.
not in my tenure.
We have had board retreats in the past where we try to get together and come up with, some common development goals, things like that. So maybe that might be an opportunity.
And that
It
really
is an opportunity. It's best done probably at a board retreat when you don't have another agenda to worry about getting to. And I think that that's helpful as well. I know that you're all volunteers, and I know that's extra time, but I think it really would be invaluable for all of you to spend that time. You would be surprised at the points of agreement that you may come up with. So I think it would be worthwhile.
Gwen, can I ask about, you said suggested support the strategic plan. Is that something that we could say we accomplished or not?
Oh, absolutely, because depending upon.
Supporting, because depending upon what process you're using, for me, support would mean, because one of the most valuable aspects to a strategic plan is to involve the community. So making sure when you're engaging in whatever that process ends up looking like and how it shapes out, that you get your constituencies to come out and participate, so all voices are heard. That's appropriate support from the board for the strategic plan, and participating yourselves if you're able to do so.
So I guess the administration that owns the strategic plan, we can't have a deliverable for the board to be establish a strategic plan, because that's not the board's responsibility. Is that
Correct.
the distinction?
Correct.
But the board should be involved in the development of that strategic plan so that you have voices, but you also have the ultimate voice in a strategic plan because you're going to adopt it or not adopt it. So you want to make sure that you are fully participatory in whatever methodology is used to develop that strategic plan. So, for example, the strategic plans that we typically do, we hold 3 meetings with the community. So I like all board members to come to those meetings along with members of the community. When I say support, you want to make sure that you get citizens from each of the communities that you represent to come out and to be heard and to weigh in. Because it's not your strategic plan, it's not the administration's strategic plan, it's the district's strategic plan based on what you are hearing from your community. Your Board of Education is really your most major function is to translate your community's vision for what they want education to be in this school district. What does that mean? And the vision for education is different in different districts. It may look completely different in a district, 10 miles down the road than it does here. So it is really important that you be fully participatory in this as well as providing support. And by that, I mean getting your community members to understand the importance and have them come out and participate in that process so that it represents a cross-section of every one of the communities that you represent. Is that a little squishy in terms of a SMART goal? Yeah, probably a little bit, but sometimes it is more qualitative than quantitative. I will grant you that, absolutely, that it is more qualitative than quantitative. But I think it can be measured. I've gone to strategic planning meetings with communities where 10 people show up. And you say, what? How can that be? It's the community's opportunity to have their voices heard. So it's really an important process to engage in.
Thank you.
Okay. I will get these goals back to you in the form of a memo to the board tomorrow or Thursday.
So does anybody have any other? Yes, I will sort of say, right, policies and bylaws is a rock that's already rolling down the hill, right? That's going to happen regardless of tonight, and so I'm sort of in the mindset, not that I want more goals and objectives, but does anyone have something that they really think is missing?
I do. Gwen's last one, engaging in professional development to achieve board certification or master. That's a lot for a lot, especially board of 12 or for board members as we're working. But since COVID, everything is virtual. And every time I talk about the delegates meeting and going, or going to our Hunterdon County meeting, I'm saying these great topics are coming up. NJSBA has been providing great topics. And it's not really just for onboarding, that people onboarding should attend the CSA evaluation, our goal setting. We all should be doing it because things change. And it's a great opportunity. And I think maybe that's something we should push ourselves. It's something as a board we don't necessarily all do. And I'm thinking that maybe putting something on we all attend this. We all attend at least one of them. Push ourselves out of our comfort zone. Just a suggestion.
Thank you, I didn't pay you for that advertisement. But thanks anyway, yeah. And I hope to see you all at workshop, by the way.
In October, which is coming up, it should be a really wonderful experience.
Well, that's definitely what came to mind for me, because I don't know if we want to tag on an additional board goal, but as a new board member, I feel like that's what I need the most. So I think it all depends on how long everybody's been here and what your strengths and needs for improvement are. But it might be nice to have maybe attend 2 webinars a year or something like that, just so we're staying afresh of what's new.
And those are
All recorded and available to you, so it's not as if you work, you can watch it on a weekend, you can watch it at night, you know, so they're recorded even if you're not watching the webinar live. The webinar's live, you can access them at any time. They're there and they're recorded, so they're available to everyone, which is sort of nice. Is that something that the board is interested in?
I think going for certification is probably a lofty
Yeah.
goal. I just think
Totally.
it's too much, no, I'm just saying because it's, right, we rotate off years. I mean, you know, continuous improvement is never a bad thing, so I don't, you know, I can't, you know, to your comment, attending 2 virtual classes a year, right? We've signed up for this volunteer job. I don't think that's I do it in my professional life, so I don't. So I'm not opposed to doing that personally.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, I've taken a couple of them like sporadically, and I was kind of surprised by like how much information I was able to get. And yes, there have been times I'm sitting at my desk and I've listened, and I still picked up on some pretty important things that I just noted, and that helped me. Like one was the CSA, one was the what was the other one that we just did? We were just talking about it in policy. I forgot what it was. But anyway, they are definitely helpful, more so than I anticipated them to be.
Here's what I would point out, that
If you are in your first term, in your first 3 years, you have to attend at least 1 mandatory training that's offered virtually, so that would get you only to having to do 1 additional. Okay? And if you are a re-elected board member in the first year of any subsequent term, you have to, again, do a mandatory training, so you could do that as you wanted virtually, although I would tell you they're much better in person, but that's just my take on it, my bias about in-person trainings a little better, because there's somebody to ask questions of. But nonetheless, that means you really only have to do 1 additional virtual meeting a year. I'm telling you how to cheat.
We didn't hear that.
Okay, good.
So
Good,
the
good.
idea that we all attend the same one?
No, I mean,
No, I think we can rotate,
I think
share.
picking what
Yeah.
you think is helpful. I mean, that's my opinion. I think
No, no,
picking what
sure.
you think is helpful for you, and
Okay.
I just think it's kind of the honor system, right? Make it
Yeah.
we all have a personal goal.
Mhm.
That's my
Sure.
2 cents
No,
on
I
it.
think that's right. That's good.
But we may all have different levels of interest or
Mhm.
different things, so.
Sounds good.
I'm not saying you just have to go to one, but
I was just trying to point out that
No. I was really just trying to understand if we were going to align on the same 1 or 2 or 3, whatever we were agreeing to, versus each of us being able to, the way Glenn explained it, based on our interests and what we want to understand more of, and so we independently select.
And I think it's
Yeah.
important to independently
Yeah.
select, because you all have.
varying levels of knowledge and interest in various subjects, so I think it's beneficial to be able to choose what it is that is most interesting to you, or that you have a need to know or want to know.
And most of us turn key anyway.
Exactly.
So when I
Yeah.
come back from them, I'm sharing, Tara's
Yeah.
sharing.
Yeah.
So,
Great. Well, thank you very much. I hope, again, truly to see you all, or at least some of you, if you can make it. I know some of you don't have jobs that committed, but if you do, it would be wonderful to see you at workshop. I look forward to seeing you there.
And if you need anything, all of you, I think, know how to get a hold of me. I'm on the website, and I am available all the time if you have questions. So, thank you very much. All right.
Thank you so much. I just have a follow-up question for the group on the strategic plan. So who has to actually develop the strategic
So
plan?
we're going to hire someone, right?
Okay.
It's typically a facilitator,
Right.
and then that facilitator helps us organize and
And do it, okay, because I think we had mentioned this at a prior board meeting, there's been a bit of a lapse between the one we previously had and now, so we'll have to look at timing then.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think sort of to your point and to what Brian was asking a little bit, once you have the plan, there's sort of a built-in reporting out that would happen from the superintendent in terms of what progress is happening on each of the areas there.
Yeah.
So I think more to Brian's question, that becomes some built-in accountability that you're hearing about and sort of overseeing the development, execution, and implementation.
And did we have one that expired?
We did.
Okay,
It expired
I just wanted to confirm that.
It's expired in 2023.
Yeah,
So you said we can,
because I remember hearing about it, but I
When
don't
are we
remember
gonna-
seeing it.
Exact same thing.
Yeah, there's different facilitators out there. I would say we look at a couple different ones just to see what our options are.
Oh, there
and
it is.
then come back with it.
Because I remember.
Okay, so is everyone,
Did we use NJSBA for?
We did
for
last, I believe the last time we did.
I think we
yes.
did, right?
Yeah.
so why don't we go out and see what third parties have, get some costs. We also have that option, and then we can make a decision, or collectively, what maybe.
That's what I
you guys
thought.
say.
I know as a parent, I've been involved in the Arcadia 8
Yeah.
both times, and Gwen's done a fantastic job, so, yeah.
I think we used it, I think we used them last time, right?
We did use the school boards last time. yes.
Okay.
Okay.
That was good. That was a good session.
Right, great, thank you. All right, so now we have a presentation of the 2024 NJ GPA results by Rich Braun, Director of Curriculum, Articulation, and Student Achievement.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for giving me the time to give you the results of this assessment. So I'm here tonight to share with you the results of the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment, which we call the NJGPA, that juniors took in March of 2024. So for the NJGPA, there's an ELA section and a math section. The NJGPA results are reported in two proficiency ranges: not yet ready for graduation and ready for graduation. The ELA portion assesses students' understanding of the ELA 10 standards, while the math portion assesses students on Algebra 1 and geometry standards. So students who do not demonstrate that they're ready for graduation on this assessment have three other opportunities to demonstrate proficiency in order to be eligible for graduation. They can first retake the ELA and or math components. They can meet a designated cut score on substitute competency tests such as the PSAT or SAT, or finally they can complete a portfolio appeal. Just before I get into the results, I always point out that when presenting these state results, that the results that I'm presenting tonight do not include any of the academy or full-time Polytech program students, since they are technically part of the Hunterdon County Vocational School District. So according to this assessment, looking at the state results first, so according to this assessment across the state, 81.6% of the students were graduation ready for ELA, and 54.7% were graduation ready for math. So our results in our district were significantly higher. 91% of the juniors in our district were ready for graduation in ELA, while 72% of our juniors were ready for graduation in math. So this slide shows how those results compare to 2023. So 2023, we've taken this assessment 3 times, or students have taken this assessment 3 times. The first year was a different cut score, so it's hard to compare results to 2022. So we're comparing them to 2023, where everything is the same as far as cut scores go. So you can see here the scores are almost exactly the same as they were in 2023. ELA went up 0.3 percentage points. Math went down about 0.6 percentage points. So this slide looks at the ELA results by school. So you can see the 2 schools were again very similar, had similar results. About 94% of the juniors at Voorhees being considered ready for graduation, and 90% of the juniors at North Hunterdon. This chart shows the ELA results by subgroups. Our Asian students with 504 plans, and female students were the subgroups that had the largest percentage of students who were considered ready for graduation, while our students with disabilities had the lowest percentage of students who were considered ready for graduation. Moving into math, the two schools were fairly consistent, with 76% of the Voorhees students being considered ready for graduation and 70% of the North Hunterdon students being ready for graduation. And then this chart shows the subgroups. These are district-wide subgroups for math. Our Asian students are the subgroup that had the largest percentage of students who were considered ready for graduation, while students with disabilities were significantly below the district average for students who are considered ready for graduation. As I already pointed out, both ELA and math NJGPA results for our district are well above the state average. Just so that you know, all that we have at this point are results for our district and the state. So we don't have results for any other districts at this point. At least, not we don't. Some individuals may have other results. When we do get those results, we'll certainly look to see how our scores compare to other high schools in the state that are similar to our district. So we do have several intervention strategies available for students who were not considered ready for graduation from this assessment. All seniors who have not yet demonstrated proficiency in math and or ELA are placed into workshop classes. Those classes provide additional support to prepare them for the PSAT and the October NJGPA. The workshop classes also help students complete the portfolio appeal if they still haven't demonstrated proficiency. In addition to the workshop classes, students receive instruction in their comprehensive math and ELA classes, and students who are struggling in those classes utilize our resource rooms throughout the day and can get extra help from teachers from 2:30 to 3:10. We also offer a 24/7 online tutoring program that's available to all students at no charge. And finally, students who are not meeting the standards of their course participate in our response to intervention program, and this program provides or allows a team to develop interventions to help the student be successful. And it's a short presentation. Do you have any questions about this?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Before some of the more complicated ones. How many students in North Hunterdon and Voorhees take this exam each year approximately?
Approximately, I believe that this one was about, I'd say about 250 at Voorhees and about 400 at, about 400, so about close to 600 probably.
Okay. Is it just the juniors?
Just juniors, yes.
Yeah. Has this been a significant percentage in the students with disabilities? I mean, does this seem to be a continual situation within our district?
Yeah, that's something that we definitely want to address. Obviously, we want to address it, but it's something that we want to spend a lot of time looking at. One thing to keep in mind is that a lot of students are declassified by the time they take this test their junior year. So if they still have an IEP this late into their junior year, there obviously are some significant disabilities that would impact their scores. But it's still something that, we're interviewing currently for a director of special services, and this is definitely an area that we want to focus on.
Have we seen a significant decrease in the percentage since we haven't had a director of special services?
Not that I've noticed.
The question, is it appropriate to measure the students with disabilities? I mean, I guess that's depending on how you classify it, that's it could be a very broad group of students. So to put them in the same category with everybody else, held to that same standard doesn't seem appropriate. I don't know how. I mean, so obviously it drags down our numbers, and I'm sure it obviously does the same for statewide numbers. I mean, if you qualified and you classified like that, I would think you would be held to a different standard for graduation from a high school. But
in some instances, in students' IEPs, they're required to take but not pass the assessment. So, but still, they're reported along with everybody else. So, not everyone who's in that category may be required to pass it because of their disabilities, but they still are required to take it. There's a very small percentage of our students who also do not take this assessment. They take what's called the dynamic learning maps. So there are students with, the most significant disabilities do not take this assessment.
And do you know where we rank with other local?
Not yet. Not yet. Usually, I think last year was around January when they released that. So at this point, we do not know.
So the reason why I asked about the number of students is if you look at the mathematics, it's really the math ones that I think are the most concerning. that if you're looking at the percentage of students that hadn't passed it, so not graduation ready, for North Hunterdon it's 30% and 24%, so 25 and a third kind of thing. So you're talking about, a third of 600 students, so 200 kids that are not ready because of the math capabilities they have. And a quarter of the students at Voorhees, so it's it's like 75. That to me seems like a lot of students, and for the benefit of everyone else who was not in the committee on the curriculum where we're discussing some of this, I think that prior to coming into 9th grade, parents don't fully understand the way that our classes are structured in CP, advanced, honors, and there's the AP, but and so parents just take the recommendation from the 8th grade guidance counselors. And what I was curious about was, in light of the fact that you've got kids learning at a CP level versus advanced or honors, what is that doing to the students that are in those lower level classes when it comes time to take this test in their junior year? Have they learned as much or practiced it as much as, say, students that are in a higher level math class? And so I'm curious to kind of see if that's something that we can dig into when we start evaluating the classes and what's being done here.
Sure, I mean, all of our classes certainly teach all the standards for the course, but one of the things that we want to focus on is infusing more of these kinds of questions into the curriculum so that they're not exposed to them for the first time on the test. That's the big push for us.
Is there any way for us to, what Beth had mentioned, a way to take a percentage of how the classes like CP, Advanced, AP, are we able to kind of like compare those classes?
We are, and we do, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we get a whole data file that we can break it down by teacher, by course, by just about everything that you want to do in the data file. So yeah, we go through those analyses.
How many students of the not graduation ready we get ready by the time graduation comes? For let's take like last year.
Virtually all of them. Yeah, I mean, typically all of them. In fact, most of the students who are listed as not graduation ready at this point are through other means, like the PSAT or SAT or things like that. The number of students who are in the workshop classes for the fall, it's in the 20s at North, and I think in the single digits at Voorhees. So we're looking at about, maybe 30 students district-wide who are not yet proficient in English and or math.
Right, because they get a chance to take the test again in the summer.
And
That's
they've
it.
already taken
Yeah.
it over the summer. Not all of them did, but they had the opportunity to take it over the summer. They will also have an opportunity to retake the test in the fall, in October. And then they also can take the PSAT in the fall. So there are a lot of opportunities. Mm-hmm. Yes?
The other options like the PSAT, do we decide, or the administration decide the cut score, or
No,
is it the state?
that's a state. Yeah, that's a state-decided cut score.
Rich, do you have any sense of, is there a perception or awareness on the parts of kids who might have one of those SAT or PSAT scores, knowing that this doesn't really count for them?
So one of the things, you just mentioned the different courses, one of the analyses that we can do from the data file is the amount of time that they spent on the test. Right. And we break that down by the course that they're in, and the students who are in the lower level classes spend the least amount of time on these assessments. So you can actually see how much time they spent to complete the test, and it's evident that some of them just click right through.
Right, but those aren't necessarily the students who are meeting the PSAT or SAT.
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah,
Right.
I was asking more about students who know, because for a number of years there, the junior test in particular, students knew if they had passed as freshmen or sophomores, the junior test wasn't going to count, and so they paid it very limited attention, and the results showed it, and then the state wisely moved off of that.
Yeah, and we don't advertise whether or not they're proficient, especially by that point, because they take this test in March, so not all of them. They would have taken the PSATs, well, probably not the SATs by that point. So we have an internal document that shows all these scores, and their counselors certainly might go over it with them, but it's not widely publicized whether or not they're already proficient.
And I guess there's also, I don't know what sort of comparison you do between how our kids tend to do on the SAT and the PSAT versus this assessment as compared to other district factor group schools. Obviously, kids tend to be a little more invested in the SAT or the PSATs because of what it means for them. So I don't know if that's something where you even see that kids who are high-performing kids doing well on the SAT may or may not necessarily aim to get the highest score on something.
Yeah, we haven't done a direct correlation study with that, but anecdotally, it does make sense that a student is more. Some students are more invested in the NJGPA because they want to graduate.
Right.
Other students, they know that they're not going to college, they might not be invested in that. So I think you're going to get different students for different ones who are more invested in it. But.
And then regarding the academy students, do you have to do any work to separate those, or they're already pulled out of our numbers as we get them from the state?
They're already pulled out when we get the numbers from the state.
And I realize it's sort of a double-edged sword there, because on the one hand, they're academy students, but realistically, they're in our English and our math classes, and so they're getting their math and English instruction through this district. Right. It would be interesting to see, when those results come out, which at some point you'll have them, that we actually have a sense of how another subset of our kids are doing on that.
Yeah, and I will say that, so there's two sets of reports that we receive. What I'm presenting here are called the published reports. We also get what are called on-demand reports, and those on-demand reports that we receive include those academy students. Right. So I can't present that information, but we do know them. Yeah. So everybody that we test, we know how they did. So the initial reports that we run are based on including the academy students. And it bumps it up a little bit. It's not a dramatic change, but it does bump it up a little bit.
I look at it, it's unfair in the sense that in a number of instances, our strongest performing cohort of students are excluded from our results. Conversely, like when you look at the subgroup populations by building, are there subgroup variances that are significant enough to kind of help give some insight into that North versus Voorhees performance?
I presented the subgroups by district because the numbers are so low within the school that they're not even enough to present publicly.
Because they're below 10%.
Well, yeah, it has to, 20. The 20 is the number, yes. Yeah, so that's why we do the district results. Obviously, within the buildings, they look at the reports for their individual subgroups within the schools, but we just don't have the population to present by school.
And then I guess later on, kind of what Nicole was pointing to, when you start to get more information on other districts and then ultimately the broad subgroups within those districts, should give us a sense of how we're comparing. And something that might look bleak for us is actually fairly common. And it would shed some insight into that in an instance, or point the way to say, here's a subgroup that broadly underperforms. We have that same subgroup, maybe they are underperforming similarly, maybe they're doing a little better, maybe they're doing worse. Right. That could point the way towards curriculum and instruction. And
one of the things that's really helpful, the state, as you know, used to have what's called district factor groupings where they would rate the schools, the districts on an A through J scale based on the socioeconomic status. And I think the last time they did that was like the year 2000. I mean, it was a long time ago. We were considered an I district, so it's good to compare us to those I districts. It's similar socioeconomic status. So that's what we do. And we can compare the subgroups. The state gives us, it's a massive spreadsheet that has all that information, eventually when they release that. Okay.
Rich, when would you know if the cut score is going to remain the same for this coming year, or if it's going to go up to the original 750?
I don't even know which vendor is testing this year. Believe it or not, the state has gone out for requests for proposals for testing, not the NJGPA, that's supposed to stay the same, but the NJSLA, which is the one that the ninth graders take, that was out for bid, and I don't even know who's doing it. So we don't have a testing calendar for this year yet.
Okay.
So,
but we would have the same vendor for this, though.
At least for the fall.
They have guaranteed that it's the same vendor for the fall.
For those students to retest?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
Because the state has also been talking about eliminating it completely. That's also been, because it's not a federal requirement. Many states have eliminated a proficiency test junior year. It's a state law, but not a federal one.
I think there's only about 10 states that do it.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of states who do it anymore. Yeah.
Well, if you look at the state's percentage on math, only just a shade over 50%. That's really bad. So as a state, I don't know if they want to have that track.
That's me coming.
We participate.
Participated in the NAEP last year, which is the
Yeah.
national assessment.
Yeah.
And when you consider the statewide results for the NAEP assessment, New Jersey is one of the highest performing schools, or districts, or states, I mean.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's sort of a double-edged sword because, to your point, Christina, the state wants to present as, high achieving and having high expectations, but it also bites you at other
Exactly.
times in other dynamics.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, moving on, the Chief School Administrator's Report.
All right, thank you, Glenn. We do not have any reports of harassment, intimidation, and bullying for this month because school is not in session.
I'd be worried.
I know, right? Who knows what's going on?
Well, you never know. Sometimes things become, that we have to deal with online, so. And then there were no incidences reported at the July meeting either for June, but we need a call for a motion.
Okay, so I need a motion and a second to affirm the determination on the HIB incidents reported at the July 23rd, 2024 board meeting.
So
So
moved.
second.
Yes.
Which was 0.
It's up to 0, right. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay.
Okay, now on to the good news. So a few things have been happening. Bloomsbury has continued its journey to join the North Hunterdon-Voorhees district. This June, Phillipsburg and Bloomsbury came to an agreement that it is best to move forward without continuing their send and receive relationship. So that made it a lot easier for Bloomsbury. It's now in the hands of the Commissioner of Education. However, there is a 20-day public comment period. We did post something on our website, so anybody who is interested in contributing to the public comment can get all that information on our website and be able to send that information in.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
What does that do in terms of where Bloomsbury fits within the board members?
So once this all happens, the county office will look at their reapportionment. We don't know if they would be part of Bethlehem and part of that group, or because it's so small that I don't think they would have their own representative.
Okay.
It would probably be reapportioned into some.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, good evening.
Hi.
They litigated to permit this board to consider a contractual relationship first.
Oh, okay.
So they would have no vote unless, to Rich's point, they had sufficient number of students that came by a contract to have a seat,
Okay.
which I think is not possible when you consider their student enrollment.
Okay.
For the regional to change would require votes throughout the region.
Okay.
And is steps way down the road.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
They would start contractually and then,
Yeah.
if that progresses.
And it's a rollout.
It is a rollout, yes. So it'll be, and it would be the freshmen of next year that would have the option. So, I did want to mention that STEM Camp was hosted at North Hunterdon, concluded on August 8th. They had a bridge building event as the final culmination. The students spent the week doing fun events like building catapults, dissecting frogs, and programming robots.
Looked like a large group from the pictures I saw.
Yeah, it was a very large group. ESY, Extended School Year, has concluded for the summer. Students learned all about the history of the Olympics and watched a few of the events live as they were happening. They also participated in 2 theater workshop sessions to prepare for the upcoming Winter Unified Musical. And then last, and definitely certainly not least, I want to wish a big congratulations to North Hunterdon mathematics teacher Megan Lewick. Megan was selected as the 24-25 County Teacher of the Year for Hunterdon County. So she is now representing one of 21 teachers in the state that will be vying for the New Jersey Teacher of the Year. So we are very proud of Megan. She's been doing a phenomenal job, and this is well deserved. We had the county superintendent came out last spring to surprise Megan in her classroom. We made a big event of it, had balloons and flowers. But then after the main event, we were told you're not allowed to say anything. And then in August, on August 6th, they met at TCNJ. They had the ceremony where everybody was officially appointed as their county's Teacher of the Year, and so now we are allowed to publicly say something, so that's why we're saying this. And that's all I have.
Thank you. So first, on behalf of the Board of Education, I'd like to express our condolences to Jeff Bender and his family. Jeff's mom had been battling for some time several medical issues, and Jeff's mom passed last week, so we continue to keep Jeff and his family in our thoughts. As I had mentioned at a prior meeting, while Assistant Superintendent Rich Burjax has been attending board meetings, Superintendent Bender was continuing his work and overseeing the day-to-day operation of our schools. Later this evening, the board will approve Dr. Burjax to serve as acting superintendent into the fall. Dr. Burjax has the confidence of this board, and we thank him for his continued leadership. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the district office staff and our school staff and administration for their continued commitment to our students. And our next board meeting is September 24th, 2024 at 7 p.m. at this office. Moving on for public comment. During this portion of the meeting, the public is invited to address the Board of Education with comments. You are requested to sign the register provided for this purpose and to state your name, municipality of residence, group affiliation, if applicable, and direct your comments to the school board president. While all comments will be considered by the Board of Education and a response may be forthcoming if and when appropriate, individual school board members may not respond to the speakers at the time of their appearance. The public comment period will be a maximum of 30 minutes in length unless there are unusual circumstances. You'll be allocated 3 minutes to speak, and no one will be permitted to speak more than once on the same topic until all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. Please keep your comments respectful and non-defamatory, and maintain the level of decorum appropriate for the public meeting where students may be present and in the audience. Any comments? Yes.
Good evening. I'm Amy Barrett from Highbridge. I'm here to comment with regret on the retirement of North Hunterdon librarian Martha Hickson, which is listed in the personnel agenda. For the record, her retirement at age 65 is planned and voluntary. Martha is a friend and an inspiration to me in my own Board of Education advocacy work. I wanted to summarize her accomplishments, so I looked for her profile on the school library webpage. I was stunned to discover that all mention of Martha Hickson has already been erased from the North Hunterdon site. Martha holds a Library of Science degree from master's degree from Rutgers University. She served for 19 years as the library media specialist at North Hunterdon High School. She is nationally recognized for her advocacy of intellectual freedom and her efforts to combat censorship, and she has won awards from the American Library Association and the New Jersey Library Association. More important, her library has been viewed by students at North Hunterdon, especially by LGBTQ students, as a safe harbor from bullying. For those of you who think that Martha fought book bans too loudly and publicly, let me remind you that this was started in the fall of 2021 by a small group of people at a board meeting who called Martha a groomer and pedophile for including books with LGBTQ characters in the high school library. They also sent her hate mail, harassed her on social media, and tried to file charges with law enforcement. Martha fought back loudly and powerfully and continued to fight a second book banning attempt this year. She also mentored other librarians facing book bans. It's disappointing that the administration treated Martha's efforts to protect herself, her students, and the First Amendment freedom to read as an embarrassing annoyance rather than a noteworthy achievement. I worry about soft censorship moving forward when young librarians and teachers may be too intimidated to purchase or retain controversial books. That would be a great loss to your students' intellectual development and to the school's reputation for academic excellence. To the board, thank you for voting against banning books. I again urge you to strengthen your policies around library materials and public complaints. Make the complaint process more rigorous and onerous. Allow only students or parents of current students to bring a complaint and limit it to one book at a time. And please set a limit on how often the same books can be dragged through the reconsideration process, perhaps once every 5 or more years. To the book banners on the board and in the audience, know that Martha may have retired, but the people who showed up to support her are still here, and we are local, vocal, and organized. Thank you for listening.
Hi, my name is Joy LaBelle, and I'm from Union Township, and I wanted to thank you all again for your volunteerism. I know that's a lot of work. I volunteer a lot as well. I would also like to mention Martha Hickson, because it was concerning that she was erased so quickly. Ms. Hickson was locally recognized as a county and by the state, nationally recognized, and major media articles were written around her. Also award-winning, acclaimed by peer organizations and many others. You've got big shoes to fill, guys. Good luck at getting somebody that's as knowledgeable and as skilled and as able as she is. I'm hoping that you will wisely contact the NJASL, which is the New Jersey Association of School Librarians. They may know who is actually coming through with degrees in library science and so on, and I'm sure they would be happy to either put it out on their sites to help you gain applications, and also to help you review any applications if there's a tie or something in question between several people. I also wanted to comment on the other personnel item mentioned with Mr. Bender. I'm sorry to hear about his loss. I lost my mother, and that's not a great thing, so our condolences go to him. However, seeing that he's missed most of the meetings, and Dr. Burgax has been filling in mainly for that role, and I'm quite sure in many other things throughout the day, I would like to see if there's any way you could just find a way to make Dr. Burgax permanent. Mr. Bender, for all practical purposes, was supposed to have achieved his doctorate while he was at Union Township. He was our superintendent there, and I was dismayed when I found out he got moved over to here, where he was also supposed to achieve his doctorate. Going back to your NJSBA rep, Gwen Thornton, who presented, and about professional development, going forward, if someone says they're supposed to be achieving their doctorate, or that's part of the condition of hiring, I think he should not be getting bonuses if that has not been achieved. So I'm a voting taxpayer. I expect a quality education. I've had 4 children come through, 2 graduated Rutgers already, and 2 are currently at Rutgers. I'm relying on you as a board to protect our First Amendment and to do the jobs that you've been elected to do. So thank you again for all of your time and your volunteerism. We appreciate it.
I'll fill it in a moment. My name's Harlan Ettinger. I'm a resident and taxpayer in Highbridge for about 37 years now, and the parent of 2 Voorhees High School alumni. This evening, Gwen Thornton recommended that establishing board norms should be your 3rd goal for this coming school year. As you establish these norms, please resolve to eschew the culture wars. Focus your collective effort and attention on using the limited resources available to provide the best educational opportunities possible for our students. Encourage an employment environment that helps attract and retain educators who are committed to the education and well-being of all students in the North Hunterdon-Voorhees Regional High School District. To me, this means publicly supporting and expressing appreciation for the many excellent educators who work in the district. Thank you. Thank you. I can't get any of these pens to write. There we go.
It works. I just wanted to say I'm sorry to hear that Martha Hickson will be retiring. I think she was absolutely fantastic librarian. I think it's very sad that she didn't get the full support from the school that she deserved. She was incredibly inspirational to the students here, and I really appreciate everything she did for all the children. She was very inclusive. She loved what she did, and she fought hard for these kids, for the minorities. Absolutely brilliant teacher, and I think you'll be hard put to replace her. Oh, sorry, Joanne Japp, Annandale. I had 2 children who went to this school. Thank you.
Anyone else? Great, thank you. So moving on to curriculum committee report.
So the curriculum committee met on August 7th. We had a couple of committee members who were not present for vacation purposes, but we had a quorum. We did not have a monthly report dealing with the student statistics. However, at our prior meeting, we had talked about the disparities that we were seeing in the number of suspensions and different types of punishment between the 2 schools. The good news is that we found out what the discrepancy is. It had to do with duplication of numbers accidentally, and so once that was addressed, the numbers are close from the standpoint of compared to the size of the schools. So we'll be providing, training will be provided at the 2 schools on how to report suspensions in a proper way, and then the student records will also be updated where there were any incorrect suspensions noted. We also discussed out-of-district placements and the challenges that we are facing with the number of students coming into our schools. We're going to be doing a demographic study this school year, hopefully with some of the sending districts if they already have plans to do so. One of the concerns raised was, as if we start to see an increase in the number of families moving to the area with younger children, how do we plan for, budget-wise, paying for out-of-district placements if the number continues to go up? And then we also talked about the Mind of the Athlete program, and conversations or surveys will be had with the coaches to understand the benefit of the presentations as well as the extra services that are provided outside of the presentations to see if it's still serving us a benefit. And also the students in the marching band, since the marching band is considered a sport within the school district, to see if those students would like to participate as well. We also discussed the NJ GPA, and the comments that were discussed at committee are the same as the ones that were discussed here. And then we'll be examining the 2024 AP results at the September committee meeting, because at that point we'll have that information.
Questions?
I have a question. The surveys for the Mind of Athlete, how are those surveys taken? Does anybody know?
Right now, there is not a survey. What we're going to do is we're going to add that to the end of season surveys that all the athletes and their parents get,
Oh, okay, okay.
asking them about their experience with it. So we're going to collect that this year so that we have data for next year.
Are they anonymous?
They
Do they have to be done on the computer?
they-
Not really anonymous, because there's IP address, okay.
The athletes get their own too? Because I'm only familiar with the parent one.
there's
They
a
also-
there's
Oh,
a
I
survey
didn't
that goes
know
for
that.
students and a survey for parents.
Okay, that's good.
They're similar questions, but
Geared towards kids.
yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, so I need a call for motion and second to approve agenda items 10.1 to 10.3.
So moved.
John?
Second?
Beth? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving on to policy, Kim?
We had our meeting on August 5th. Everyone was present. The two agenda items, first being NJSBA update. Dr. Berjak provided a brief update on the progress of the policy manual conversion. The team is about halfway down the stretch and anticipate hitting our goal of completion by October. More examples were shared during that update meeting that showed how NJSBA policy will replace multiple policies, which helps for our public and the district and us, making the manuals less complicated and more direct. Another update is scheduled for September 16th with NJSBA. Our second agenda item was policy 0143.2, student reps, representatives to our board. There was a discussion revolving around the need for additional language in the policy that would limit input into our discussions around agenda action items. Language will be developed and presented to the rest of the committee for consideration. The general concern was the student reps not a voting member of the BO, but they should have input into action items, but when the board is in a motion not to take that action. We also discussed how alternates should be used if the primary student board could not be present for part of the meeting versus absent for the entire meeting. So we want to make sure we're clear, so the student reps are clear and board is clear as to the communication amongst each other. We will review language that committee members propose at our next meeting. We will decide to add, amend, change after discussion with the board. It was noted that NJSBA does not have a policy addressing this topic, so we will need to decide if we keep the language developed when the conversion is complete, which is, you're going to see, it's a state mandate that they don't have a policy. It's a statute.
Yeah, no, I know, it's an 18A.
So you would think, every district now has a policy for this.
Yeah, so NJSBA's response to me on that was typically, if it's in statute, and if we're just going to repeat the statute, there's no sense in having a policy that just restates statute because you have to do it anyway because it's law. And so that was the rationale. But again, that's up to the policy committee and how they want to.
Well, it's the board, how we want to function, but I mean, it's helpful for the reps as well to know, I think, okay.
And we're going to maintain our old policy manual will be archived. So if we wanted to look at language of something that we had in the past, we can always take that, review it at policy, and determine whether or not it's appropriate to put in.
And for the good of the order, there was discussion brought up again about assemblies. Building principals have been already directed and sent out notices to families on the topic. Parents were notified of any upcoming assemblies, including the topic of the assembly and who the speaker is. The notification will include an opt-out form, and I believe that was already sent to the families on August 8th by both buildings.
Yeah, that opt-out form was for the library materials. The parents wanted their children to opt out. The assemblies will happen as they're happening.
As they're happening. So I apologize for that. We also discussed briefly the cost of mind of the athlete, and I know Beth said they discussed that as well. The annual cost of the mind of the athlete is $15,000, broken down $2,500 per day for 3 presentations at each school. Comments were positive for the program. And we also discussed policy 2415 and the protection of pupil rights amendment, PPRA, with Federal Department of Education. All of our current surveys that students complete are in compliance, and we'll continue to monitor. And that was it.
I just have a question, Kim, just for clarification purposes. When we were discussing the school board reps, student school board reps, are you saying that if there is a pending motion, that the student rep should not be permitted to comment during that period?
Yeah, the discussion was, and it's just a discussion of
No, I know.
language,
Yeah.
that when the student reps report out to the board in the beginning, they're reporting, but when we're in discussions, that board members could ask the student reps those questions during that time, if there was questions to be had.
But, so I guess what I'm just trying to clarify is, let's say we were having a discussion about Mind of the Athlete right now, and we had the student reps here. Are you saying that they would not be able to provide a point of view on that program?
If a board member were to ask for
Only
their
if they
input.
ask. But why would that be the case? They sit here to be, their voices are meant to be heard. We shouldn't have to ask them for their opinion on something. I understand if a motion is pending.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
Okay, so as long as it's about a motion pending, I understand that, but, part of the policy about, or the bylaw relating to student representatives is that we allow for their voices to be heard and be part of the democratic process of discussing open items in civil discourse, so it's important.
So so the proposal is for them to only speak when only.
No, they're allowed to, they're giving their student reps continue to participate. They give their opening statements. We're talking about when we're in the middle of a motion,
Okay.
the discussion.
So,
Were they
example, like
involved
right
in
now-
a discussion well, we're not in the middle of a motion right now.
Right,
So if we were talking about the Mind of the Athlete, they could freely speak. But if we're in the middle of approving agenda items 10.1 to 10.3, what would be the reason they would speak? Because we're not, in the middle of a motion, we're not asking questions. What do you mean by
no, we have discussion in a motion.
Oh, discussion in a motion.
Yeah.
Right, that's
Okay,
what-
I'm sorry,
right.
I got confused.
So I guess another, for instance, would be if we're having a budget presentation, they can participate just as the public can participate in that budget presentation. But once a motion is made and seconded, then within that, we have our deliberate, the board has its deliberation.
Yeah.
At that point, the public, anybody that's not one of the 12 elected
got
board
it,
members can't.
Correct.
Can't,
Got it.
yeah, can't
That makes
participate.
sense.
That
I
makes
didn't
sense.
understand.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
trying to clarify too.
Yeah.
All right, maybe a further clarification. Are you suggesting that once we're in discussion, we couldn't ask?
No,
No,
that is where we said,
Yes.
and if board members are conflicted, we want further information from
We
our
can
board
ask.
reps, we can have that opportunity to ask.
I mean,
During the
yeah,
motion.
I'm guessing, because, since I've been on the board, there's been one instance where a student rep has spoken during the book issue, and I'm hoping not looking to limit that kind of participation, because that would seem antithetical to having that representative voice on the board. I guess I caution putting too many obstacles in the way. If you're talking about a procedural sort of thing, that I don't think is an issue. I know I got feedback from the community that they were very happy to hear the students speak, and I would just want to make sure that we're not limiting or hampering student
Absolutely
participation.
not. That was made clear in the discussion, that it was during the motion that we value having student reps on the board. It's very important to hear from the student body, but there is a procedural, and that's what we were talking about, process. That during that motion, that's the time for the 12 board members to have that discussion and that vote.
And nothing in statute requires any process per se. That would be something we would be layering in.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And so any board member can ask the student to comment, right? It doesn't.
Right.
Well, what if it's a topic and we don't consider what, you know, it's like, we're not actively considering their opinion, but they have a strong opinion, how could they voice their opinion then if we're in discussion?
Unless we ask them.
Unless we ask them, but how could they then, if there was something that we're not asking them, how would they then get their voice heard?
Yeah,
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, we would have to make a point of asking.
They would have to
raise
raise their hand, and we would have to add, and something like that, or?
Yeah.
I think also maybe there would be a possibility if there was something that was big on the agenda that they could put in their report too, maybe to address that, hey, spoke to a couple different, other students in the school, they voice their opinion on X, Y, Z. I mean, unless it's something that comes up in a conversation that maybe they didn't think of, but if it's something that's, pretty big and, well-known, maybe they could put that also in the beginning of their discussion, and then that way a board member would know, once we started talking about it, that somebody can ask their opinion if the conversation.
And there was also discussion in our meeting about surrounding, selection process, giving all kids the opportunity. There was other things in the policy that we'd like to see clearer.
What about the selection process that's in question?
It's a discussion of, compared to other districts, that is it peer body, is it the student body selecting? Are they nominated? Is it just driven by administration? If you go to the policy, you can see, and you want to give all students the equal opportunity. And then there was discussion, I think our policy states to the effect we have 2 reps for each school.
Mm-hmm.
But when you compare policies and look at policies, and even our policy, it's not clear. Like if a student is absent, who steps in, how does it, how does that resolve? So we just wanted to make the policy clear for everyone.
I mean, the only hesitation I have on kind of really being specific on dictating how that works is then you really pigeonhole yourself into a process. And I'll be very interested to see what all of the NJSBA, what the policies look like, but our policies are fairly broad and leave a little room for flexibility. So I'd be interested in seeing what the proposal looks like, but I just don't know why we would spend a lot of time trying to restrict students, our student representatives.
I don't think that was the task of it.
Okay.
We're going to put language together and propose it to the board.
Okay.
But that wasn't the means of it at all.
Okay.
So I guess I'll say this, right? I guess I'm a little bit unhappy that I'm considering them to be adults and I'm making them raise their hand.
Yeah,
I'm just sort of saying it right.
I feel like
a
we're
little-
stifling their voices.
No, I feel they're not an adult. I'm making raise. I basically relegated them to the kids' table. I feel that's my personal opinion, but let's see. You have language you want to propose. So let's look at the language and see how it looks. But that's my 2 cents. I mean, I don't want them to be rude by any sense.
And have we had an instance where a student, I don't recall ever having an instance where a student rep was disruptive, or...
I don't think that wasn't the conversation in the meeting, that it was just about being disruptive. It was more of during a motion, and that there was confusion as to who was here, who were the board reps, who's a lot of times board reps leave after we have business. And aren't here or prior to, so it was just clarification.
So that I agree with you. I think there was some confusion as
stifling.
students were swapping seats. So I don't agree with
That's
you.
not our goal.
I think that needs to be laid out better. I agree with you on that.
I mean, because there wasn't clarification coming from a student rep's point. They don't know, can I do this, can I do that, what can I do? And that should be spelled out to them.
Well, that should be something the principals sit down with them prior to them becoming the student rep and explain their code of conduct.
We're not even, it has nothing to do. Go back, just take a look at the policy and go through it. And we were comparing it to different districts to see if, are we doing, proportionally, are we doing what's best for the students, for running our meetings, and they vary distinctly. And like I just said, it's statute since 2021. Prior to that, It was policy, each district creating a policy.
Right, but the statute is the inclusion of the student rep.
Yes, and that's what we, of course, want, absolutely. We value that. That was not at all the discussion.
No, I meant the policy doesn't go into particulars limiting their speech and participation.
They're just broad statement policies. You can read our policy.
Right.
Any other questions?
Just a quick comment, that I think this comment you made, Rich, that the new policy manual will exclude statute. That's not just about this particular question, it's kind of their philosophy, right?
Yes.
NJSBA.
Yes.
Is to, okay, so we should recognize that that's going to be kind of a continuing thing. It's not only this aspect, it's any time there's a statute, their kind of philosophy is don't regurgitate it to then have to update it every time the legislature changes something.
Yeah, I'll also say, right, I think the difficulty sometimes when you have a policy and there's a statute, the policy tries to interpret the statute, and I think it can very often create confusion because it's not exact. And so I can tell you in prior years when we reviewed a policy and you go back to the statute, they don't match. Which is, I remember, Brian, you and I have had conversations where like, so what's the right version, right? And I think that's sort of the difficulty, I think the downside of trying to interpret them, right?
I don't think that prevents us from adding policy to interpret or to state how we're going to implement it or something like that.
Yeah,
Like, so a policy that says we will have school reps, student reps, is not needed. A policy that says here's how we're going to engage them or whatever, it could be a legitimate thing to add to NJSBA.
Yeah, the one comment I think I made right in policy was, I think it'd be helpful to at least say there's a policy, see statute, so at least people know there's a statute out there, because I don't know if you don't always know to look for something if you don't know it's there. But that, again, that's we can leave up to policy when it comes down to that point. But. Yeah. So, right, part of the conversation that didn't get weaved in here, I think a little bit, is the reason why we've added the recommendation was to add surveys to the academy was to, right, because of the cost, to make sure we're actually getting benefit out of this. So that's why Rich recommended we add this survey at the end of the season to make sure the value is getting out of the program. So, which is a good idea. Other questions?
In regards to, would it be an appropriate time to bring up what was mentioned last month in regards to the opt-out procedure for the book?
Oh, for community relations, we do community relations.
Oh, it's in community relations.
Yeah,
right?
I have that.
Yeah, so I think it's part of community relations. So yeah, actually, we do have a readout for that. Yeah, so so we'll get to that. Yes. Okay. Other questions? Okay. So finance, John.
Yeah, thank you, Len. So we had a brief meeting on the 5th. Virtually, basically, we were going over agenda items. That was the main emphasis. The first thing is acceptance of extraordinary aid for special needs students. This portion of the aid comes later in the year, so we're just accepting it. 12.2 is it's a pass-through STEM grant. It's for teachers who will be teaching at non-public schools, STEM classes outside of their duties of working for us. It's just a pass-through. If they complete it, they'll submit and they'll be reimbursed, or they'll be paid through money that we receive from the state. So no jeopardy to us. Also, MOU with Tri-County Vicinage to allow our district to participate in state-funded mental health services potentially down the road. This will maybe help offset some of our costs with Rutgers Behavioral Health Services. Fourth item, and this should be, Katie tells us, this will be our final Honeywell contract. So I guess we'll be sorry to see them go, because we've been very successful in optimizing this grant funding. And so this is the last component, it's approximately $2 million. Most of the work is at the North Hunterdon campus regarding air conditioning, air handler units. That also spurred on a conversation regarding, from Kim, anxious to kind of see some of the work that's taken place, not only recently, but over the years, through some of this grant work that Honeywell's conducted. So, discussion followed. Most of the work, though, is difficult to see because it's on rooftops or in inaccessible places in the school. However, we wanted to open up the offer to anybody to reach out to Katie if you're looking to tour one of the two buildings, and we could potentially set something up to just not just see the new work, but also if you're the newer board member unfamiliar with the building, it'd be a great way to see it. So reach out to Katie or myself at our committee, and we can coordinate something. Additionally, you'll see on here a professional services contract, an hourly one for an assistant superintendent who will assess Rich. Tuition contracts with HCVSD. And we also have transportation management services, a contract with the ESC, Hunter County ESC. You'll see that here. We've already approved the funding for those bus routes, but this is just finalizing the actual routes themselves. We have approval of some booster club ads that will be placed around North Hunterdon High School, and that was basically it. Oh, and one other item. A year ago, we had some the lights here at North Hunterdon. The exterior lights for the stadium were replaced. Katie's working towards getting a vendor approved for Voorhees. The vendor that we liked from last year, he's not listed on the approved list, so she's working to get them on one of those approved vendor lists so we can finish that work, the exterior lighting that is at Voorhees. So that's all I have to report.
I just had a question on the Honeywell work. So I am no expert in professional HVAC services, so please excuse the question if it sounds silly. So does the work involve adding in air conditioning into the schools, or is it just the ventilation?
The purpose of the grant is to improve ventilation in the schools, which allowed us to put up brand new rooftop units on the building, which to the tune of $6 million.
Yeah, I saw that.
So I mean,
Yeah.
we had at least 11 go on the building over the summer, which was components of not only this Honeywell grant, but also the referendum, because it did take over 12 months to order some of that equipment.
So what's the overall impact in the school for students? It's just environmentally
That, I mean, we've
better?
had mold issues in the building
Okay, so
before,
that's,
so I
that's
mean,
what it
over
was,
the summer, we're fortunate now to have some of those primary concern areas now addressed
Great.
with brand new units and all new ductwork.
That's great.
And more energy efficiency. That's
But
the
yeah, that
yes.
too, yeah.
Exactly.
That's great.
The
Okay.
FFT folder you guys, or Katie
No,
put
yeah,
together.
Yes, so,
I
so
looked through
thank
it,
you.
yeah.
Right, so
It was
look
really
in
helpful.
our folder and to see some more detail on all these
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, so I
That's
asked
great.
Rich and Katie, right, at one of our future meetings for Katie to give a presentation of what's in that folder, right? So I'll let
Yeah.
you guys, that's a good idea too, so give a presentation to the board, so I'll let you two figure out when to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is tremendous, right?
It's impressive.
Right, in terms of grant money and offsetting costs, this was just, again, Katie, we said it before, this is tremendous, right? Great value to the schools and to obviously taxpayers, so.
Yeah, especially since I've been seeing the news lately of some of the other school districts are at the stage where they have to replace roofs, and the only way to do that is through referendum and cost to taxpayers, so it's very, very impressive.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Yeah.
Rich, quick question on the STEM grant. Well, I know we have the obligation to have science staff available. Is that something we've activated or have implemented, or it's just there should the request come?
So these teachers reach out to the private schools about how many hours the private schools can use them. Then they come back with the apply to the state. and then they notify us of how many hours they are going to work for those private schools. And then we are obligated to pay them through payroll, but then we get reimbursed by the state for that cost.
But not something that impacts their duty or time here.
It's all after hours.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not, yeah, it's in addition to their
Yep.
wage.
Other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to, Rich and I spoke about the memorandum of understanding regarding the Center for Family Services. I have a lot of concerns about that. I feel it's a little bit of a government overreach, as I talked to Rich about this, of the Tier 1 specifically and Tier 2 services that we can get from here. That I feel that a parent who may be in need for extra services for their child may not understand what this memorandum really states, giving the state a lot of power over their families and their children. And looking at the memorandum itself, it is pretty clear that there's going to be databases, that there's, funders that we don't know who they are, that efforts will be driven by data and evidence-based or evidence-informed practice, using health records across program that track client data and outcomes. There's just, in my opinion, a lot of government overreach. And one of the things that I think that most people know that I'm concerned about parental consent. Currently in the state, they're lowering the age of consent for mental health without parental consent from 16 to 14. They're also in the process of putting in federally qualified health centers within the school district where these students can get a lot of health guidance without parental consent. So I feel that this memorandum is just overbearing and does not protect the families nor the students.
Can you show me on the I'm looking at the memo, can you tell me where you're pointing out this overreach and where, this looks like it's a voluntary mental health service. It's not something we would force kids into. It's having the ability to provide services, isn't it?
Well, we get a lot of the help from the Rutgers service that we already have. I think sometimes these memorandums can come across and look like they're real cushy and great, but in reality, you're signing over a lot of information to the state that could, at some point, could give the state a lot of territory into family personal business.
How would they know family's personal business?
If you read through the memorandum, it's very clear, and if you look at the Center for Family Services, and if you go to the Department of Children and Families, you can read very well what can happen when CPS, or AKA the old CPS, can come into a household and consider it an issue. And I think that parents who may be desperate to get their kids help, thinking that this may help them, inevitably can hurt them. So my question, Rich, is do you know if the school's going to get any funding for implementing this or any of these Tier 2 or Tier 3 services?
No, the school doesn't receive direct funding for this. The state set up something called NJ4S, which is a hub and spoke kind of mental health network throughout the entire state. This is the organization that supports our area as part of that hub and spoke organization. And what this does is it just gives us another tool that if we want to refer students over to somebody who if one of our clinicians thinks a student needs extra mental health counseling, some other type of service, IOPs or something that is beyond what we can offer in school. This allows us the opportunity to, Rutgers would typically refer to themselves, and then if the parents have insurance to pay for that, or if they wanted to pay out of pocket, they could, but this allows them to get those services and the state funds them. And so that is the difference, is that if it was a student that needed those services, the parents couldn't afford it, this gives them an opportunity to do that.
Which provides more inclusivity to mental health.
Exactly.
It's just another, again, I don't think this would be utilized in a large number of students, but it's another tool for us to have just to offer those services to all students who might need it.
Well, there's 3 tiers. I'm trying to understand I read through the website too. There's Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, right? So Tier 1 looks like it's for everybody. Is that for all the students? Because it looks like it's workshops,
So we're not going to utilize Tier 1 or Tier 2 services. from this organization. We're just going to use them for tier 3, which
Okay,
is
that's
individual
not
counseling. So.
clear.
Yeah, that's not in here either.
Well, and again, this is a blanket agreement. We don't, right now, we're eligible to bring them in for tier 1 services without even having this agreement approved. So tier 1 services are, every school district is allowed to use them and bring them in. We have other organizations that do that for us now, so we wouldn't utilize them for this. And then tier 2 is usually group settings, and we have enough, we believe enough group settings in our school district to satisfy the need for that. This is for individual mental health counseling that will be above and beyond what we could provide, and also if the parents couldn't afford it or didn't have insurance.
And it's
So there's a lot of variables to know whether or not a parent
very
would use this.
expensive.
If
It's very
you can't
expensive.
afford mental health services, they don't take insurance.
No.
They don't, any therapist, any psych, you're not paying, you're paying out of pocket for that to the tune of anywhere, I mean, 150, 250 a session. And if a parent doesn't have the means and we can provide this to that student as an alternative to help them with whatever they're challenged with, I'm not.
I know the MOU is very broad in what it explains the services,
It's very-
but we're not
it's
going to
very
utilize
open
all
and
the
not-
services.
Not too clear to me on certain things, like, and also it might be on page 5, I printed this out to take notes, but there's also a expectation of the board with this as well. So my concern is, we need to participate in data-driven decision models and referral processes that promote early identification and intervention of students. So that's one of the bullet points of what needs to happen from the board.
So
right?
when they say the board, it's the board and the board's representatives that you have hired to do that. So that would be us.
Okay.
Figuring out which
Because I'm
students
thinking
need services,
we are not
right?
qualified for that, but we have,
Exactly.
okay, admin.
And Rich, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 mirrors academic intervention services already offered in the district.
It does. We do those things already. It's just that, and again, we want this as an option for tier 3, really, for students and families.
And that reference to data-driven decision models and referral process for early identification and intervention, that is what's going on presently with teacher communication and counselor, assistant principal communication and counselor,
Yes.
so that intervention services are provided. That's what that's referring to, right?
Absolutely. All that data is things that we're already collecting so that we can determine whether or not, and it's behaviors of students. But when I say data, it's not just surveys. It's a teacher making a note that, Johnny hasn't been acting themselves lately, right? Refer to the counselor. That counselor then uses that data that was collected by the teacher to notice that Johnny might be having some issues and call that student down and talk to them about what's going on.
Rich, one other question. The tier 3 service, the intensive service, does that happen without parental communication and consent?
No, these would all be students that the parents would be contacted and they would be offered this as a service so they could then take advantage of it outside of school.
So if they say no, it doesn't happen.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So then my other question is, if perchance a parent says yes, and then a remedial is given to that, or a recommendation is given to that family or to that student, and then it starts going down that road, but the parent's very uncomfortable, is there a way for the student or the parent to pull out of it? Is there something that needs to be signed? Is there anything, and who's going to be liable if something doesn't go in the right direction?
This is a parent taking an opportunity to get services for their child. They always have the opportunity to stop those services at any time.
I don't see that here, but.
Well, it's like any other medical service.
You're not, that doesn't look
You don't
like you're
have
under
to.
contract.
You're not under a contract. This is as to what the school is offering. It's not as to what the parent is agreeing to. I know that there are documents that have to be completed when you agree to do certain activities with the school and get assistance for your children. I think that having a program like this that would make mental health services available to families that can't otherwise afford it is a huge opportunity for this district.
I agree.
And I'm not sure what the other solution would be. There are pros and cons to everything that a district offers, but to me, the health and safety of our children should be of utmost importance.
I'm concerned about the health and safety of children just as well.
Okay.
So I'm not going to even have to debate that issue.
Okay.
The concern here is a government overreach if something goes wrong. And if we already have these services already provided to us from Rutgers or other things, I don't really feel that this has to be so.
Rutgers doesn't provide these kind of services that are being offered through this program.
Rich, do they?
They don't, no. This would be outside counsel. Again, we're not going to use them inside the school. Rutgers is our internal mechanism to provide counseling to students that need that. But that isn't a comprehensive mental health program. So students that need more than what we can offer in school, and their parents didn't have insurance to be able to go to a private facility, or they didn't want to pay for it out of pocket, and they needed the help and they couldn't afford it, this would be an option we can give them. So there's a lot of things that would have to happen. And again, we can collect the data on what happens this year with that, how many students are referred, how many students went to the program, how many students stayed in the program. We can have all that data and report at the end of the year to determine whether or not it was something that had more government overreach than the full board was comfortable with.
And all students can use the service.
Yeah.
It's not selective by
No,
socioeconomic status. Or
No, it's not. And anybody can use it. I'm just saying that this would be a tool that somebody might take advantage of if they didn't have other means.
Other questions?
Yeah, fully supporting mental health. It's just, it was confusing to me reading through this, so.
Listen, the conversation's good, right? I think, obviously you're voting on it, you should be comfortable with it, so, right, so I think it's good everyone asks questions. Okay, so I need a call for motion and second to approve agenda items 12.1 through 12.16.
So moved.
That's-
Second.
Oh, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes, I vote no on 12.3.
So yes to everything but 12.3?
Yes.
Okay, and any abstentions?
I abstain for 12.14 through 12.16.
14 through 16, okay.
I abstain from 12.3.
12, you got that one?
An abstention.
Correct.
Right, abstention, right, okay. So Nicole was opposed and was an abstention, okay. Got it, okay. Okay. Community relations, Beth.
So Tara's not able to be here today, so she gave me the opportunity to read out the minutes from our meeting that took place on August 8th. Everyone was in attendance. The first thing we did was Juliana, and I'm going to butcher her last name, Skriko,
yes.
Skriko, okay.
Very
Welcomed herself, introduced herself as our new NHV communications coordinator, and provided information about her experiences and her education. She talked about the back-to-school updates and the emails that are being prepared to send out to parents and guardians so that students and parents are ready when school restarts. Should I wait or? Okay. But she said, and students and parents, everybody seems to be ready to start the school year, which is very exciting. So she has taken on the role of communications coordinator as Marin is no longer with the district, and emails have been going out. We've received them both through the board as well as at the school level. The district is still in the interview process for a director of special services. The projected date is to hopefully have someone in the position by the end of November. We've had a number of candidates, which has been really positive for us and given us a good selection to choose from. There was discussion about the types of meetings that were happening at the different schools. I don't know if it was asked to CPAG or not, the Special Education Parents Advisory Group. We had an individual come and speak to us at the meeting 2 meetings ago, so that was June, about the organization and the group, which we very much supported at the committee meeting. The goal is to have more of these meetings take place when the Director of Special Services is hired, rather than having an assistant principal run the meeting. Someone who's more focused on the topic can run the meetings going forward and create less confusion. And then those were all those issues. We also talked about the community, the reports on community building activities, things that are happening in the schools, that were being done by the principals, and we're going to continue to have those and report them out as part of our community update. And then Before we move on to the final agenda item, the two other community notifications. One is there actually is a theater camp taking place this week at the at North Hunterdon for the whole district. I have it on good information that there were 16 freshmen that came in for it, which is really a good turnout also. But also wanted to let everyone know that one of the vocal teachers in the district who runs her own studio had a number of our vocal students from North Hunterdon-Voorhees sing at Music Fest, which is a very large music organization or music event that takes place every year in Bethlehem out by Steel Stacks, which is really nice. So she was able to have, I think there were about 6 or 7 students, 2 performances, one on last Tuesday and one this Sunday. So we're really, it's really excellent for them to have that kind of visibility. So we did talk again about the parent communication opt-out questions. So in the back-to-school letters that went out to parents, there was information in there about how parents can opt their students out of certain out of library books if they wish to do so. So that was put in there. There's also going to be a Teen Pep letter that'll go out offering students or parents to opt their student out of Teen Pep if they wish to do so. The letter will say that the parents and guardians will need to let the principal know if their student is going to opt out, though. And if there are in-school activities that are taking place, whether it's in a particular class, if that class is going to have anything that's going to be viewed or discussed, really viewed or read, and it's of a certain content, then the teachers actually send out those permission forms. We see that with movies sometimes for parents. And Dr. Buryak confirmed that still takes place. And that was it for the committee meeting.
Questions?
Yes. Thank you. So with the opt-out for with the books, it was mentioned last month that there was a procedure in place.
Right, so, wait,
Right, and
So yes, we were notified that there was, I guess, an informal procedure that somebody could email the librarian at any point at either school and ask that these books their child not be allowed to take these books out. Once we realized that there was that informal procedure that nobody was being notified about, we came up with an idea to come up with a form that would be uniform between the 2 schools and then notify parents about that so that they're aware of that process.
so there wasn't necessarily a procedure in place, really?
It was informal,
It was
yeah.
just informal?
Yeah.
But it was occurring.
What's that?
But it was occurring.
But
So
it
it was
occurring?
happening. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and how do we know it was happening? I'm just,
I don't know if it ever, I mean, it was there for somebody if they wanted it, but because it wasn't advertised and people weren't notified about it, I don't think it was being used. I don't think there was any.
Nobody's ever used it?
I don't believe so.
so.
Or at least not in recent.
It came up in response to the board discussion. That was a question that came up as to whether or not we would explore the option for parents to be able to do that. And I think at that time, the librarians had reached out to Rich and Glenn and myself because I had asked the question.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't
To
something that was
say that.
pre-existing?
Well,
I think it was
they
pre-existing,
gave
we
one
just didn't know
example
about
of
it,
an
yeah.
instance where it had happened previously. And so it brought to attention through public debate, they heard that our understanding was that no such practice existed, and they clarified that, in fact, such a practice had been done before, and this was how they went about it.
That would have been great to know that.
For 3
quite
years,
some-
nobody's known this?
Yeah, that would have been great to know, because it could have avoided so much.
So was it
Chaos.
informal? It wasn't anything written or added in policy?
There wasn't anything, there wasn't any
It was
procedure.
anecdotal in the sense that I think a particular parent had reached out regarding, actually, for a very different reason, and that was the solution that was found.
Oh, I didn't hear that conversation. Where was that conversation?
I didn't either.
Yeah.
Well, again, it was shared from the librarians hearing the public comment about whether or not we had such a
From public
process.
comment, right,
Yeah.
so public comment, I made the request, it'd be nice if there was an alternative solution.
That I remember.
So I and you, right, we received, and
We
you had
received
made a
an email
comment,
the next
we
day.
received an email from the librarian, right, so we forwarded the email to Rich, because, right, we don't communicate, right, because it's Rich's job to our staff. And we found this informal process apparently existed, and through that, it turned into a formal right, formal process that we talked about last board meeting that now is actually right in place that's been communicated to parents.
I think it would have really dissolved so many concerns on both behalves of both sides of the parents who wanted and didn't want certain books. And it would have been beneficial, I think, for all parties to have known about this informal procedure or practice or possible option. It would have diffused so many situations.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, especially that it was quoted plenty of times about how much money was spent on attorney fees and whatnot could have been avoided very simply had we known, or had administration known.
And anybody know.
Anybody, yeah.
Interesting.
So looking forward to the process, right? So that's good, right?
Yeah.
So maybe, so on a positive note, hopefully it
So just
is
you
a
for
good step
clarifying.
moving forward.
Thank you.
So just one more thing on the agenda. We did not discuss at the Community Relations Student Affairs meeting the two items that are up for vote. I don't know if it was that we didn't know about them at the time, but I don't see any reason why we couldn't vote for them. But
This
one is about the
This
booster
is an
clubs.
annual renewal. If
Yeah,
there are any
so
questions,
I
can
don't-
try to answer the questions.
I don't have
NJSIA
it.
is the
Interscholastic.
Interscholastic Athletic Association, and we have to be a member of that in order to participate in sports. And then the Booster Clubs and Parent Organizations is an annual reappointment, just so that the board knows what organizations are out there working, with the schools on behalf of the students.
I just have a quick question. Didn't we have, I always thought we did have a special education, the Parents Advisory Group.
We do, and to clarify that, both assistant principals were in touch with this particular parent that came in June, and they're going to try to work on something for the fall. We're not going to wait for the special services director to get in, but we're hoping once the special services director gets in, we'll have a more formalized schedule.
More formal. But we've
again-
always had it.
Yeah, we've always had it, yes.
One thing I picked up in that discussion, though, is it's not ours.
Right.
It's the parents.
That is correct, yes.
Yes.
So it's not ours to have, it's ours to facilitate.
Typically, our responsibility is to provide some facilities, help advertise that it's going to happen, but it is supposed to be parent-driven.
Right.
So the parents are supposed to come up with the topics they would like to discuss, and then,
But I
But we
was
help
just
them
saying
out.
that it had been utilized, and I know even in our Katie services, so that was my point. Not that it was ours as a board, meaning it is there, it was been in place, and I know because I've used it.
So question, was it like not advertised or was there something that the board needs to do to help get that information more out to the parents?
No, I think, over the last couple of years,
Just shifting
since
it.
it was an assistant principal that was doing it, if the assistant principal
Got it.
weren't sent it
Right.
out, even though it's a district thing,
Right,
maybe Voorhees parents didn't see it as a Voorhees thing and vice versa, right?
okay.
So this will allow us to have more of a
More
district
universal
level.
through both schools?
But it has been advertised, it just wasn't well attended before, and so that's why we're going to try to get some more interest in it. And it sounds like we have a parent that's willing to do that. So
And
that's-
we
that's
have like
great.
a policy in place that we're allowed to do that, right? If there are approved parent organizations that we can help spread the word?
So it's not an approved parent organization like would be on here, like a PTA
Oh,
or a booster
okay,
club.
all right.
This is a parent advocacy group that, we're required to have by state law,
Oh,
actually. so.
okay, I thought it was okay, county approved.
Other questions? Okay. Call for a motion and second to approve agenda items 13.1 through 13.2.
So moved.
Second.
John and Jess. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Delegates are still in summer session, right? Okay. Personnel?
I was not at the personnel committee
Oh, that's
meeting,
right.
but I heard that it happened. And they discussed the personnel agenda.
We did.
So,
Okay, so I need a call for a motion second to adopt resolution 081324-2 for executive session to discuss matters falling under category 8. As reflected in the attached resolution, the board expects to be in executive session for approximately 1 hour, and upon return to public session, action will be taken. Motion first.
so moved.
Second.
Beth. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are in executive session. Thank you. All right, so I need a call for motion and second to reconvene public session.
So moved.
Second.
Kim and Brian? Okay, so I need a call for motion and second to approve agenda item 18.1 and 18.2 and 18.3, which is a hand carry. 18.1 being our personnel agenda, 18.2 being executive session minutes from our last meeting, and 18.3 being resolved to adopt and approve the MOA with the NHVEA for the period 2024 through 2028. I need a roll.
Motion?
I need a roll call vote.
So moved.
Oh, I'm sorry. I need a motion and a second. Excuse me. Sorry.
So moved. Second.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Falling asleep. Okay. Roll call vote.
Ms. Cagno?
Yes.
Mr. Chapman?
Yes, with a no on 8.2.3 of agenda item 18.1.
18.2.
18.1, the personnel
Gallo?
agenda.
Yes.
18.2.
We're doing all these together.
Yes.
You can wait.
Yeah.
Yes, except a no on 8.2.3 on agenda item 18.1.
Mr. McIsaac?
Yes, on 18.1 and 18.2, I have to abstain on the memorandum. Though I'm fully supportive of that agreement, I'm conflicted and have to abstain from voting.
Mr. Mealy?
Yes, with the exception of a no vote on 8.2.3.
Ms. Reyes? Yes. Ms. Lino?
Yes, but again, with the exception of 18.2, I abstain.
On all of 18.2.
Just-
So you're abstaining just from
Oh, for the
Yes.
executive, for the
Got it.
minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Spanton?
Yes.
Ms. Beato?
Yes, with a no for agenda item 8.2.3.
And Mr. Parvanish?
Yes, except I abstain on 18.3 because I am conflicted, but again, I also support the MOU. In a way.
Yeah, I just have to verify the one because I don't know that's going to be close. Motion.
What was it?
What was that?
What was it?
Motion carries.
Carried, okay. Okay, old and new business.
So I have an item for new business. 'Cause I didn't think it was appropriate to raise it during the committee piece. So I've been thinking a lot more about the number of out-of-district placements that we have. And I recognize that we're required to do out-of-district placements. But at the same time, I've been thinking about what we can do to make parents of children who need that service more aware of what we have to offer here. And so one of the ideas I had was, can we make it a requirement that before we will approve an out-of-district placement, that the parents of those children have to attend an information session at Voorhees with a tour to understand what we have to offer. They just have to attend it and know about it. Because otherwise, my fear is that they don't know, and so they're just going with what they already have. And even if that means getting 2 or 3 other students into our program, we're not paying $600,000 for an out-of-district placement in that particular instance. So it's just a thought, maybe something that could be considered that we put in place.
I know in a lot of cases they are doing that already. But
Okay.
I don't know about mandating it, but I will look into that.
Okay.
That raises the question for me, who makes the decision? The parent decides that they're going to go out of district, and we are obligated to go along with it?
The child's, well, I guess
There's a couple ways.
there are, I mean,
An-
like,
An
go ahead,
IEP
go.
team is typically making that decision, so the IEP team would include the parent, teachers from the school. In our situation, a lot of those decisions are made before they're our student.
Right.
And we're getting them, when they transition from 8th to 9th grade. So, and then there are other ways that the parents can actually, it's something called unilateral placement, where they can decide that this is the school that's best for their student, they place them there, and then we go through litigation typically to try to prove that it's not, but it's not as easy as it.
Right.
So there's a couple different ways that happens.
So you're proposing that the parents should bring their child into the school to do a tour, meet the faculty and other before that decision?
I don't think it necessarily has to be the child. I think it's really a matter of educating the parents on what we have here, and then working with child study team or whoever else to see if that is something that is a possibility for them. There are certainly benefits to being in a school that has both neurotypical and non-neurotypical students, and there are some students that may really benefit from that, but if that's all the parents normally see, is that this is the only way to get their child an education, then they don't know what we have to offer. Clearly that doesn't work for students that have significant behavioral issues, but there are students who are on the spectrum where the parent may just not know that in our district, especially ones who haven't been in our area for through all of K through 8, making them aware of it and giving ourselves the opportunity to show them that we have something to offer them.
Is that occurring a lot in our, because I was under the impression that the team, I know we're going to have a new director of special services, but that was something that for the last several years they were working on, collaborating with those 8th grade, with the staff.
They do.
And moving these children into placements.
They do. If somebody's placed in 8th grade year, we're usually involved, but a lot of these placements are happening in 5th, 6th grade. And it's something that we don't have an option. If it's an 8th grade student, a lot of times we can say we have a program that's appropriate and have that student attend their 8th grade year, which saves us the need to have the student. It saves the sending district the need to send a student out to an out-of-district placement, and then we also have that student already in our system, which is beneficial to us because
But we
we don't
wouldn't
have
have,
to litigate to get people back.
we wouldn't have that input, let's say, for 5th and 6th grade. So, I mean, I guess.
Typically, we would, because we don't have a program that we can
Right.
provide for them.
But to your comment, and I know that there have been efforts over years with continuing professional development with sending districts, as well as articulation efforts to talk about great district programming.
Right.
So that those little child study teams are aware and are also sharing that information with parents,
Right.
at those earlier years.
Absolutely, and that is something that a director of special services 100%
Can do,
will be
yeah.
charged with, is
Yes.
making sure that, and again, there is an option of having, one sending district have a special program
Mhm.
that's still in district, right?
Yeah.
And all of our sending districts could send to one program that focuses on one type of disability,
Mhm.
whereas another district has something with another type of disability.
Mhm.
So, again, this director, we're going to charge with some of that.
Yeah, that'd be great, because like I said, I think I just wonder, again, as it comes to some of the other programs that parents may not be aware of, even, like I said, in the neurotypical universe of classes that we offer, parents may not know what we fully have available in the district, so.
Might be a suggestion when they do go down and speak to our counselors go down and speak to the 8th graders, I believe, right?
Mhm.
Still?
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, is that something, will the directors of special services be attending any of those
Yeah,
possibly?
I mean, they'll actually attend, they have a director's articulation that happens, so they'll be more focused on that.
Okay.
But same
What's the
idea.
challenges, how do you get all the parents whose kids are already in these schools?
Well, a student that's that's in one of our sending districts,
Who's already in one of the schools, right? Those parents are probably tough to.
it is tougher. Yeah. Sometimes those are, but again, I know a lot of times they do tours to try to show parents what we
Yeah.
have and.
Yeah, I'm not
and
against the
promote our
idea.
programs.
No,
I'm
I
just
know,
trying
no,
to-
I know.
just-
I know what you
making
mean.
sure
It's
you
harder.
actually get a hold of
Yeah,
them
sure.
to show them the options.
I think the only thing I don't have an answer for tonight is whether or not that can be mandated.
Yeah, sure,
And
sure.
that's what I think there's something.
And Rich, students can come in from Sending District to North or Voorhees and go to the opposite high school, correct? If those services.
Yes, and that we typically do that.
Okay.
We try to focus on programs at each school so that we're not duplicating services.
Right. The best for the student, what's available. Okay.
Anything else? Okay. So a call for motion and second to adjourn.
So moved.
Jess?
Second?
Beth? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? We are adjourned.
Great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.